What's up, everybody? Hope you're doing absolutely awesome out there. Thank you so much for coming back to join me for another video. And in this video, we are talking about my favorite go-to daily driver filter brewer, and that is the Orea V3. And more specifically, my recipe that I like to use on a daily basis with that brewer. This video isn't sponsored by Orea. They haven't sent me any products to check out. This is a brewer that I bought with my own money a long time ago that I just happen to really love, and I wanted to share that with you and share my recipes and my thoughts about this brewer with you. So if you've been around and been in the coffee scene for a little bit, or at least in the last few recent years, you've probably heard of the Orea V3. It's a very popular brewer, and for good reason. Like I said, I really like this brewer, and only on occasion do I stray from my daily ritual of using this brewer. Now, that's not to say I don't enjoy the other filter brewers that I have. I have a lot of them. It's just that the Orea is my favorite. It's the one that gives me the most consistent, repeatable results that I just enjoy using. It's made from Tragamid, which is a really cool post-consumer recycled polycarbonate style plastic that not only is incredibly durable, it has really good thermal properties, which means as you're brewing coffee and your water and coffee slurry is, happening down in the bottom of the brewer, it's not going to draw any heat out of the brew that's happening, which is really good. It keeps it nice and consistent, and it makes for a much more even brew. It has a very fast flow rate. The holes at the bottom of the brewer, the center hole, and then the elongated holes around the outside just make for a really fast flowing brew. And essentially what this means is having a brewer that can flow this fast, you can grind your coffee finer, which does a couple of things. Number one, it exposes more of the surface area of the ground coffee to water, which will get you a much more even extraction. It's a very easy brewer to get consistent, repeatable, and enjoyable results on every time you brew with it. Flat bottom brewers have a tendency to be more consistent and even because instead of being a cone that's funneled down to a smaller diameter opening at the bottom, like say something like a V60, it's got a much bigger surface area on the bottom with a lot more holes for that water to be able to flow through. Hence why it flows so fast and why you can grind finer to control your flow rate. But it helps the water draw down much more evenly through a more similarly or consistently shaped coffee bed. There are a few things I want to talk about that I feel are a little more important things to consider first before you're diving right into what's the best recipe to use for a specific brewer. As the old saying goes, garbage in, garbage out, right? This applies to a lot of different things. Basically, if you use something that's not good, don't expect a good result in the end. And what I mean by this isn't good from a personal preference, flavor perspective. Coffee's subjective. Everybody likes different tastes. What I'm getting at when I say good is I mean good quality. You want to use the best possible quality coffee you can. I feel like this is a little bit of a no-brainer, but the better coffees you buy, the more well roasted, the more well sourced coffees versus some commodity coffees and other things that you could be buying that maybe aren't as consistent, aren't roasted very well. Yes, those coffees may be cheaper, but there's a trade-off that comes with price, right? So you really want to be buying the best possible coffees that you can buy that have the flavor profiles and the flavor notes that you like. That's going to yield you the best results you can possibly get right out of the gate with any brewer, with any recipe. The next thing that's also really important to consider is water quality and water temperature. Now, the good thing is I've already made videos on these topics, so I'll have those linked down in the description and up here for you to check out. What I will say about water is that arguably next to the quality of your coffee, it's the next most important thing I think you want to consider. After all, your coffee is mostly water. So you want to make sure that the coffee water you're using or the water you're using to brew with is good quality and you're using a temperature that works well for the type of coffee you're brewing. As for grind size, I'm typically in the 600 to 700 micron range. And it sounds silly to say it like that, but I just want to be able to give you a reference for those of you that do measure your coffee particle size. This isn't something I do all the time. It's not something I expect anyone to do. There's a much easier way to figure out what grind setting you should be using for your coffee, and that is just experimenting. Grinders are different, coffees are different depending on the density of the coffee, the processing method, all those sorts of things can impact how that coffee extracts in the water and how that water flows through the coffee. So one grind setting on a particular grinder isn't going to work for different coffees, even if it's that same grinder, that same brewer. It's not going to translate the same. You're going to have to make grind adjustments as you experiment with different things, as the coffee ages, as you use different coffees. There may be a ballpark adjustment that gets you very close on a good majority of coffees, but there's no one grind setting that works for every coffee, every time, every scenario. It just doesn't work like that. So what I would recommend is targeting a grind setting that gets you the flow rate you're looking for. For me, I like to grind my coffees where it gets me about a 2-minute 15-second to 2-minute 45-second total brew time. I just find for the types of coffees that I drink, it yields the best, extraction at that grind setting for that, water flow rate for that total brew time to get me flavor profiles and tastes in the cup that I really enjoy. But again, subjective. You just have to experiment, play with it yourself, figure out what works best for you and the coffees that you're brewing. You don't need the craziest, latest, greatest, gotta have it, best grinder out there. You just need a grinder that's in your budget that does the best job it can do for the grinder that you can afford or the grinder that you have. Whatever that situation looks like, you don't need to go out and buy a $600, $700, $800, $1,000, $3,000 grinder, whatever. You don't need that. I know that I'm fortunate and I have the luxury to have some of those things, but it doesn't mean that you need to have those things to make a good cup of coffee. Utilize the tools you have to the best of your ability and enjoy the cups of coffee you're getting with them, because as long as you're using good coffee, good water, you're most likely going to get a good cup of coffee, even if you don't necessarily have the greatest grinder. So if you already have something you like that you use, that's great. If you're in the market for a grinder, don't feel pressure and obligated to buy the most expensive, latest, greatest thing. Get something you can afford that does a good job. Learn how to use it. Learn how to dial it in and dial in your coffees for the types of coffees you like and for the brewing methods you like to use and for the taste you like to get, and be happy with it. That's my rant on grinders. I know everybody's kind of been talking a lot about grinders lately, and it seems like there's a new grinder every day hitting the market. But I sort of am hating what that's doing to the coffee community and the coffee world, putting a lot of pressure, especially on people that are newer into the specialty coffee world, to have the latest, greatest, gotta have it thing. And so just know that you don't necessarily have to have the greatest grinder. Just do the best you can with what you have and enjoy the cups of coffee that you're making. So my recipe for the Orea V3 goes a little something like this.